Hi, welcome back to the Keto Naturopath. I'm Dr. Goldkamp. I wanted to go deeper into the protein sparing modified fast since I've got a lot of questions on it, both from the podcast, now that we're doing the YouTube, and in the Facebook group, and in the general Facebook group. So some people think this is a new thing. Gosh, breaking down the amount of protein throughout the day as opposed to just one huge gulp, one huge meal, gosh, that's such a new concept. No, it's not. It was established well before I was even in medical school. So it's not novel. It might be novel to you if you're hearing it for the first time. So I'd like to go into a little further detail so we really get this down. It's not something you have to do, and it may sound unduly complicated, but it's not. This is as easy as falling off the proverbial log. I'm telling you, this is not something that has to be a big deal. Okay, so I'm going to go over there, use our PDF that we use for our program a little bit here. And so to explain what I've already put up before, I believe. And so first of all, how do we calculate the amount of protein we need as a minimum per day? There actually is no maximum. We'll get to that later, but as a minimum. So we simply go online and we start with finding out what your ideal body weight is. So online there's a number of meters, equations, tables that you can use, and they are all very close to each other. So I don't really care. It's not something that I'm so attached to. They go, no, you have to use this particular site or this particular equation. There are equations for that, but they're all within a pound. So I'm fine. Use any. We're looking for a target. We're not looking for scientific specificity at this particular juncture. Okay? Okay, so what I did is that I put together a table right here from just on, it's gender neutral actually, but I did break it down to both men and women. So in this case it's men. I did it from 4 feet 10 inches to 6 foot 2 inches. I did every other inch just to save space, and you get the idea. So I'm going to go to me more or less. I'm 5'10". Between you and me and the lamppost, I'm closer to 5'11", at least I was at one point, but I'm calling myself 5'10". All right, so 5'10", 70 inches. My ideal body weight is 162. I actually weigh less than this now, and for all of my life up until maybe a year or two ago, I weighed over this. So I would say this is pretty much on the nose. Okay, so that was my ideal body weight. And I'm going to jump over here, and so how I calculate my total grams of protein needed per day as a minimum, total grams of protein needed per day as a minimum, is very easy. You simply take your ideal body weight in pounds, and that's the number of grams. And yes, I know I used pounds and I used grams, and so I have 162 grams. This has been like the universal equation for at least 60 years, if not before I was born. So that's how pretty much, I'll say accurate, but we're just looking for that target. Because most people that are interested in a protein sparing modified fast, especially the way we do it here, are either wanting to lose weight or build muscle. Pretty straightforward. Lose weight or build muscle. But how this became so precise over time was through bodybuilders. Bodybuilders, women or men, wanted to really drop the percentage of body fat they were carrying at the time of competition, so they could really see the details of their muscles, how sinewy that was and how hypertrophy that was. And that was part of the competition. How well defined are they? Can we see that muscle definition? So by doing a protein sparing modified fast in this way of doing it, they got there. They maximized their muscle growth, their muscle synthesis, optimized would be a better word. They optimized it. And they also optimized their fat loss. It worked. So this is tried and true. So what is my minimum amount of protein that I need on a per snack meal basis. So I need roughly, if you want to use a rule of thumb, it just take 1/5. 20% of your total should be about 30%. But if you want to get really technical about it, oh, let's go look at that one. It is 1.8 grams per pound of ideal body weight. So let's just simplify it by a smidgen and say that it's 1/5 of our total, or 20%. Pretty easy multiplication. So you can be as technical or as simple as you want to be. What that means is it breaks down your overall minimum amount of protein that you need per day into 5 different servings. And why would you do 5 different servings as opposed to 1? Well, you can do what you want to do. I mean, this is protein sparing fast either way, and they'll both be effective. But if you want to maximize, optimize your muscle growth, which is a little bit, so did you know if you did nothing, but if you had at least 1.8 grams of protein per pound of ideal body weight, that you would actually stimulate some muscle growth. So that's really good, because when you think of the elderly, actually, that with age-related muscle declines, sarcopenia, we talked about that before, is that this is really appropriate. So you don't necessarily have to get them to a gym. You should, and there's other reasons to do that, but in terms of having enough protein, that is the minimum they should have per each time eating. So if they snack throughout the day, it's perfect for them. They say, hey, we're going to have 5 snacks of lean protein. So what does that look like? So back to my height. And by the way, 5'10" is the average height per male they use for males in the United States. So that's why we're using it. Not so much because it's my height. So we have 162 grams total minimum protein per day. We're dividing that by, we did use 1.8 grams per pound. We have 30 grams per snack. So if I have 30 grams 5 times a day, I get a better effect, more optimized effect in terms of both weight loss and muscle growth. The muscle growth isn't something like you can watch your bicep grow just because you're doing this. It's minor, but it's an important point. And some people say, well, that's the opposite of intermittent fasting. That's the opposite of time-restricted eating. I'm not saying you have to do it this way. I'm saying, should you want to know, and people always ask, what's the most optimized, most strategic way of having protein throughout the day on my fasting, protein-sparing fasting days, this is it. Take 20% of your total. You now have 5 sections. Have that throughout the day. For 3 or 4 days, you're doing this per week. If you want to do it a few weeks at a time, that's good. But remember, I warned you that this by itself is not a complete nutritional diet. You need to have things like liver and egg yolk if you are on the carnivore, but you need to put in other aspects, and I talked about that in another video. So don't fool yourself that you're going to be doing this for the rest of your life 24/7. No, you'll be doing this intermittently, I would say 3 or 4 days a week. And this is very effective. This is what we do all the time. And so it's actually, for me, kind of hard to distinguish between when I'm doing protein-sparing modified fast, having lean fats, and when I'm not doing it. It's not that difficult. Basically, I have the same kind of food, but then I put on mayo and I add some other fun things. But that's about the only difference. So, and this has made a tremendous difference in my life, both weight-wise and how I feel I look and how I feel. So there you go. So you can do it any way you want, breaking it up into 5 snacks per day at a minimum of 30 grams per day. Okay, so what does that look like? That's what it comes down to. It already sounds like I'm leading you down a very technical path. I'm not. I'm just kind of actually perseverating over the idea that if you measure things out, you will get a bigger bang for your buck, right? Okay, let me show you. There's the woman's chart. You know, the same thing for women, you can go through. But what I want to do is show you, we worked out, and this is the PDF that we give people who do our course. Coming up. I believe it's coming up. Let me see. Okay, here we go. So here is on this page, page 3, the 4 things I say you need to do to calculate, which is what I've told you, your height and weight and gender, and you find your ideal body weight, and you find your minimum amount of protein, and then you divide that by 5 for 20%. So this is what that looks like. So for a man who's 5'10", like me, that what 30 grams of protein would be, and I did a list here, all right, well, that works out to be 3.5 ounces of grilled skinless chicken. Well, I recalculated this to be very exact, and I got 3.4. Who cares? It's close enough. Really, it's close enough. So what would I do? Well, as you can see a picture here, we use that same scale, and that's raw, by the way, uncooked. So let me show you what cooked looks like. Okay, so this, for me, would be my complete protein required per day. So what does that mean? That means it's 162 grams. What is that in ounces? It happens to be 18 ounces, 18.4 ounces. Okay, so what is that in pounds? Okay, we have 1 pound, 2 ounces, 0.6. I could have been more specific and say 0.4, but that's the scale that we use, pretty straightforward. So only once do I have to do this. I just have to ballpark it. What does grilled chicken look like for my day? That's what it looks like. That's the amount there for the day. This is what 1/5 is, right? Or 1.8 grams per ideal body weight, pound of ideal body weight. So hard to read, I know, but this says 3 ounces and 3.5 ounces as opposed to 3.4. So this is exactly what is right out of that chart. This is what 3.5 ounces, 30 grams of protein looks like. So the reason you eat whole food sources of protein is because, yes, there's some fat in there, of course, and yes, actually there's a little carbohydrate in there. There has to be. That's how life is. Nearly nothing in the way of carbohydrate, but you get a much more optimized mix, if you want to use that word. And so the reason I say this is some people go, I'm going to go to a protein powder and measure out exactly how much I need, put it in water, and take it down. No, that would drive a deficiency even further. So just don't do that. Or I'm certainly not advocating that. There's so many people that get into trouble doing that. And as I went over the history before, you saw what happened. They got into heart concerns. So this is a whole food source of protein. Absolutely great. Do I care about the chicken? Is it free range? Well, if you can find free range, what do they call it? Cageless chicken, clearly. So that would be the best. So if you can have the best, get the best. If you can't, don't. Do what you can. So this is the chicken, and let me go back and show you some other things. But we will go into the kitchen later, not on this video, to show you what exactly do we do. And the point here I want to make is only once do I have to measure this. I'm not going to go so precisely every time I go to eat. That would be, I would quit in a second. But up front, if I just measure the amount of chicken I need per day, I can eyeball it. And I go, I'm good. I can eyeball it. I see what that is. And I measured it. If I really have a doubt, I can get that out and measure it again. And here, for what I need per chicken, for a grilled chicken on a per snack basis, that's it. If I wanted to put in beef, you can look sirloin and so on and so forth. So what do we use for looking that up? I use a chronometer. So the point is not to be too complicated. It's pretty straightforward. You can look this up, and the references just here in this video should be sufficient. So just do this once, and then you're off and away. And it's simply optimizing your weight loss that you can obtain through a protein-sparing modified fast. I think it's tremendously useful, and I hope that removes the question. This is not new. This is been out there for a while. It's just showing you. It's the opposite of slick marketing. It's a little tedious, eh? Talk to you later. Bye-bye.